Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Frontline Advantage. I'm excited to introduce to you today Ryan Englin from Core Matters. Ryan and I met a few weeks back when we were attending Beekeeper's Frontline Success Summit. We were at a breakout session sitting in the same row, and we just started chatting with one another and found we had similar ways in how we wanted to tackle the idea around employee engagement, voice, and more. So Ryan and I set up a follow-up call. During that follow-up call, I said, Ryan, we got to get you on the Frontline Advantage to share some of the good work that you're doing and talk about the synergies and alignment that we have. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ryan.
Hey, thank you for having me here. And yes, it was great to meet you. And I think we just clicked. It was like we're like, well, yeah, duh. Why aren't other people doing it like this? So I'm super excited to be here. It's great to know you. And I'm really excited about what you guys are doing as well.
Great. So tell us a little bit more about Core Matters.
Yeah, so we are a consultancy that does a lot of training and coaching for contractors. And, I grew up in the trades. It's my passion. I love the trades. I think there's so much opportunity here. One of the things that we realized a long time ago was that the trades in particular is an industry that is slow to catch up with the times. They're slow to adopt technology. They're slow to understand that maybe the job market's changed a little bit. And so what we do is we work with them, we partner with them to implement our hiring process. It's called the Corfit Hiring System. And it's all about attracting, hiring, and retaining the right people. And I put an emphasis on retaining there because I do believe that retention starts with better hiring. And so we come in, and I like to say we teach people to fish. So not only do we build the processes, engineer all the processes for them, but we also come in and we teach their team and their hiring managers how to do the stuff that we as leaders may take for granted. Like we as executives may go, oh, well, duh, we should know how to do that, but they don't. And so we come in and we teach them. And it's an amazing system because it puts the employee first. It's all about the employee's needs, their wants, their desires. And I think that's something that the contractors and the industry in itself has really just lost sight of. Like we know it's to be true that we got to think about the employee's needs and we got to think about what they're going through, but for some reason we choose not to. And so that's what we're doing out here at Core Matters.
Tell us a little bit about differentiators. You and I talked about some of that. I love the kind of slides you put together and the way you think about things. Why Core Matters in particular when thinking about coaching and training for the trades?
Yeah, so a lot of people have told me that not only is my book and some of my workshops, but our training in particular is very disruptive to the industry and in a good way because we're doing things differently. We challenge the status quo. One of the first things I want people to get to wrap their mind around is recruiting hasn't really changed much in the last 30 years, 50 years. We post an ad online. Now it's online. It used to be in the newspaper. We post an ad and we hope people call us and we hope people apply. And when they do, we screen them really quick because we get more applications than we know what to do with. And we're looking for that needle in the haystack. And what I ran into about a decade ago was this. We take recruiting, we put it in the arms of HR, the Human Resources Department. And HR exists for compliance and safety and making sure that we are taking care of our people in the company. But the one thing HR is not good at is marketing. And I realized that recruiting is actually a marketing activity. You're putting the right message in front of the right people at the right time. That's marketing 101. And that's what we need to be doing when we're thinking about attracting people to our business. See, I don't need to look for people who need a job. I need to find people and get my message in front of them who want something bigger and better for their lives. It's been said that people don't leave jobs, they leave people. Well, that's all about attracting them to a better culture, a better way of thinking, a better way of being. And when we do those things, all of a sudden, the cream of the crop rise up and say, I want to join your team. Not when we're desperate to fill a position, not when we're like, oh my gosh, we're bleeding people, we just need more people. Not when I just took on a brand new project and I don't know how to mobilize for it. But when I'm just going about my day, people knocking on my door saying, hey, I want to join your team because of what I've seen, because of what I know, because of what I believe about you and your organization.
I like it. It's almost this continuous proactive approach rather than this reactive, hey, we need to fill roles. Let's go look for people. Instead, it's, hey, let's always be out there to have an awareness and a presence so that we attract the right talent. In a way, it's almost like when thinking about sales and manufacturing or demand gen, it's, you know, oh, we need more business. Let's just try to go do more sales and go quote more activities rather than, hey, let's constantly put out content demonstrating the good work we're doing and how we're best in class and why people should want to work with us when they're ready. So I really like that mindset. If you'd be open to it, you shared with me some really great slides that really help visualize the difference, say, between employee experience managers, the roles that they have versus, say, the mandates under traditional HR, and why maybe people who are very good at how we think about HR may not be as well positioned, sort of like how you're talking about with marketing. Would you be open to sort of sharing that, especially because we're a visual first YouTube channel?
You bet. Let me get that slide pulled up here. Here we go. So this is something that, and I'll just be vulnerable for a second. This is something we struggled with for years, is the fact that at Core Matters, we often get lumped into HR consultants. We often get sent to the HR department for the HR team to decide whether or not they want to work with us, whether or not we're the right fit for the organization. And HR doesn't, not to offend any HR people, but they really don't quite understand what it is that we do. And so when we were looking for a way to really differentiate ourselves, we started putting into buckets the things that we know HR does and the things that we do. And what occurred to us, and to many of the people we've shared this with, is that we really are developing your employee experience processes. We are really training your people about how to deliver on a better employee experience. Whereas if you look at on the left side here, you see all the things that HR does, the payroll and the compliance and the record keeping and the staffing plans and strategic planning. But where they often don't get too involved, maybe they dabble in it a little bit because they know there's a need and there's no one else in the organization doing it, is in the onboarding. And I'm not talking about systems onboarding. I'm talking about how do you give people an opportunity to feel like they belong here? People need to know how to join your team way before they need to know how to use your systems. Because if they don't feel like they belong on your team, they're not going to last. So they could be the best at using the system, is not going to work. Or retention processes. Often retention is something that we look at after the fact. So, a bunch of people are leaving. A whole crew just walked off the job. What could we have done better? I believe you need to have somebody in your organization saying, what can we do proactively to keep people from leaving? And whether that is surveying your people or talking with them, or even just giving them a friend in the workplace, creating opportunities for friendship. And then we've got the stuff I've already talked about, the employer branding. What's your message outside of your organization to bring new people in? Often you give that to your marketing people and they know how to do demand gen. They don't know how to do this recruiting thing where people understand the culture and how to fit in. And then employee engagement. I mean, this is where you and I hit it off, right? Engagement, it's one thing to say, oh, we have this employee engagement initiative. But if we don't hear the voice of the employee, if we aren't right in the trenches with them going, what is it that you need? How do we engage them? So we came up with this idea that instead of us being a recruiting firm or a training firm that teaches you how to recruit, we're really an employee experience design firm. And that's what we do first. And everything that we do is through the lens of the job seeker, through the lens of the candidate, through the lens of the employee. When we start talking to people about this and we implement this, they go, that's the missing piece in my organization. I don't have anyone that just owns that. And often I see employee experience managers in the workplace, they report to HR. This cannot report to HR because otherwise you get HR impacting the decisions and what they're doing. And it's going to slow down progress. And I'm all about let's move as quickly as we can, as long as our people can keep up, so that we can really make this a great environment for people.
For all those HR folks out there, at least the sentiment I feel, and maybe Ryan, you sort of echoed some of this as well, is that it's not that you don't care about the employee experience. It seems like there's a desire, there's an interest, but when you've got to deal with everything already on your plate, especially things that are compliance related or related to risk, it's hard to go from a risk mitigation mindset to one of let's really explore all of a sudden giving everyone a voice and allowing them to say whatever they want to say, when the culture has historically been one, or your role has been one defined as prevent or avoid liability and risks associated with people doing anything outside of what may be considered normal. So this clear delineation of saying, okay, let's have this employee experience role. And while you bring that up, we can also talk about, this is one of the fastest growing roles in the country. There's research from LinkedIn and from the Wall Street Journal talking about this role and really the proactive nature of it, of needing to kind of have that pulse on the employees. Is that right, Ryan?
Absolutely. And you'd briefly mentioned the org chart, and often people aren't sure where to put this employee experience leader or director or manager. And they need to have their pulse on the entire organization, not just one vertical, not just one department. They have to have autonomy over the entire organization, because if sales does something that impacts your operations team or your fulfillment team, somebody needs to be managing that across the departments, so that we don't have one group of people feeling like they're not being taken care of and another are. And this idea of employee experience, it's nothing new, frankly. We've been talking about customer experience for decades. Employee experience was right behind it. But it was this nebulous thing, kind of like servers in the cloud. Like, we're not really sure what it all is or what it means. And we'll do our best. But I agree with you that it is one of the fastest growing. And I think the big reason is because we recognize the need. But I still think a lot of people are struggling with, but what does this person do? How do they bring it all together? What resources and tools are available to them? And that's what our system has done, is brought all that together so that they have an operating system for how to deliver on the employee experience. And even to the point where we get into, how do we create a great experience for people when they're not performing? How do we create a great experience for people when we have to terminate them? Like, just because they're no longer employed here doesn't mean that we need to make this the most horrible, gut-wrenching experience for them and the rest of the team. Like, there are ways to impact all of that.
Those little details matter. I was reading a post today on LinkedIn too that talked about how the best salespeople use language in a way that's more precise, or how people do show me, you know me. They really just take a few minutes to really understand their audience every time they interact with someone. So those things that you talked about, whether it's having to terminate someone, how you do that matters a lot. At the end of the day, the business needs what it needs. But it sounds like, this is just validating your focus on employee experience. As you can see here, one of the fastest growing roles at U.S. companies, ranks 5th on LinkedIn's list of top 25 fastest growing jobs. First time it appeared on the list was last year. It's more technical today. They're utilizing employee surveys to determine how engaged and satisfied workers are in their roles, improving staff productivity, loyalty, and retention. And then, the story of this person at United Parcel Service, which I thought was interesting, that she's dealing with hourly workers, people in the trades, and she's walking around to different facilities, observing them, and then conducting one-on-one interviews, which is fine. And then, giving local leaders feedback on how to inspire their staff. But, when I see that kind of paragraph and what's highlighted there, I say, that person could really utilize a tool or solution on where they should be focusing their efforts in a proactive way to identify hotspots, whether it's related to labor relations, whether it's related to potential turnover, managers, the equipment, coworkers, growth and development. I mean, you name it. Having that consistent pulse could really be beneficial. And I think what I really like too, Ryan, with the work you're doing in consulting and training, is that, Teamforce is a software as a service solution. We are a great intermediary utilizing technology to provide that voice of the employee. But a lot of what really needs to happen, both in solutions and how to kind of continue reinforcing the types of behaviors desired, the questions to be asked, really requires that human in the loop, the touch to help both on the follow through and then the re-engagement. Talk to us about what excites you with this relationship we're building with one another and how we could be helpful to clients.
Yeah. The little bit that I've seen of what you guys have developed and what you're doing, where I get so excited about it is you've understood that the way to engage the front line is to understand what they really want. And You can't do it in a long, lengthy survey. Here's 30 questions that you may have never been asked before, so you're not quite sure how to answer, or, oh, the leaders want to survey us again. I guess I'll just pencil whip because nothing's going to happen with it anyways. You probably have a term for it, but I mean, it's equivalent to micro learning. It's like, let's find the little things that hit them, and then we can dig deeper instead of hitting them with a whole big thing. And they go, well, there's 17 problems wrong. No, here's one. And now let's go deep until we find the root cause and the solution. And I think that a lot of frontline employees have lost their advocate. And I feel like what you're doing is creating that opportunity for giving the advocate a voice. Someone that says, hey, this is what our people need. And here's the proof. Here's the evidence of it. Not because I did some fancy survey and have some fancy algorithm, but because I asked the simple questions and I asked it without disrupting their day. Because that's the other thing too. You take someone off the factory floor, you take someone out of the field, that costs real money. And when you do that hundreds of times in a month just to get a survey, I mean, is the juice worth the squeeze at that point? But yeah. I think what you're doing here really gives an opportunity for those frontline employees to have a voice.
Well, let's talk about that, the money aspect, because what often happens is we meet with someone who says, you know what, I love this. Send me the details, send me a proposal. And they've got to go take it internally to someone who's never heard about us, never gotten on a call with us, things about culture and, hiring and retention and recruiting is, wait a minute, what's going on here? This is a new expense line item. The status quo was fine. Talk to us a little bit about how you help organizations understand the ROI benefits and maybe some before and after examples of success.
I think so for a lot of the clients that we see the high volume, which is a lot easier to get data when you have high volume. The smaller companies sometimes don't have the ability to grab all that data. And we work with small companies up to the mid-market. So this works regardless of your size. But really the emphasis is on that frontline employee. You see, every single decision we make in business, I believe, can be tied to a number. It can be measured. Every single one. And if we just take some of the industry stats around disengagement, I mean, even if we just go with the disengaged workforce, which is only about 25 to 30%, and we just put numbers on what they're doing, the impact is, I mean, for some companies, it's sick just to think of the numbers, right? Like what it's costing us. But because we don't write a check for that, because it doesn't come out of the bank account, we don't see that money transfer hands, we often dismiss that as an expense. And here's the thing about things like burnout and too much overtime and disengagement is that's ripped right off the bottom line. It's not like you said, there's not a line item for some of this stuff. And it's not. All of those things I just mentioned is straight out of profit. So whether you've got stakeholders or shareholders or someone else worried about that, that's what we really need to be looking at is what is it doing to your bottom line? And when we look at, so that's one side of it. Then the other side of it is what's the opportunity cost? Whether it's defects, whether it's unhappy customers, whether it's a sales team who can't close because we're too far out on being able to fulfill or mobilize. Like there's so many things that can impact the organization when our people aren't engaged, when we don't have the right people on the team who have this sense of belonging and purpose and feel like they're engaged and want to be here. So, I mean, that's how we think about the numbers. And we are incredibly data-driven, not to the level of sophistication that you guys are, but we get the data wherever we can get the data. And we make heads or tails of it. And that's the other thing. I think a lot of organizations have data, but they don't know what to do with it. And that's one of the things that we're experts at is looking at it and saying, what do we do with this now? How do we move the needle for you? And so I would say that a couple of the big stories that just really come to mind for me actually have less to do with the actual numbers and more to do with the confidence of the executive team. I don't know how often you've had this happen, but I've talked to executives that say, hey, I struggle getting out there and building strategic partnerships or selling these big jobs because I'm not confident I can mobilize. I'm not confident I can meet the timeline. I'm not confident I can meet the budget with the low staff. And when they realize they have a system where all they have to do is turn up the volume knob to bring in more of the right people, all of a sudden their confidence goes way up and they go, wow. And I'm not kidding you. I can't tell you how many times this happened. Client calls and go, we just landed the biggest job ever. We just landed the biggest job ever. I've heard that so many times just in the last couple of years. And I truly believe that even though you might not be able to connect the dots all the way there, their confidence level was such when they were sitting there presenting to the client and showing them the opportunity that they had because they had the confidence to move forward and bid those jobs. That's what got them their biggest deal ever. We had one client that was struggling to mobilize for a job. He needed 50 employees in 90 days. Now, keep in mind, he was only a 200 employee company. And we said, here's our process. Here's how we will screen them. Here's how we will vet them. Here's how we will onboard them so they stay. Because that's where most people mess it up, is they're hiring people too fast. They're not onboarding them well. And then they leave or they disengage and they do it over and over and over again.
And it's constantly just to fill positions rather than nurture, build relationships, sort of stay on the radar when the timing's right. Just like all the lessons we learned building a business, we all want to close quickly. There's only a very small percentage of people who are currently in the market looking for a solution. And it's how we sort of nurture in the middle of that funnel, build those relationships, build that trust, so that when the timing is right, we are top of mind. And I think you're really bringing that mindset to people when they're thinking about finding and retaining good talent, is being that employer of choice. That what's the NPS, or what do you think of that resonates when you hear that brand, and would you want to go drop what you're doing to go be part of that organization? And that's really inspiring. Is there anything else you want to share, Ryan, before we wrap up?
Yeah, I was just going to give one other story that just popped into my mind. So, please. One of the things I want to share is that this isn't an overnight process. This isn't an overnight fix. This takes time. And usually it takes time because change is hard. Nobody likes change, right? I love change, but even I don't like it when I'm not the one implementing the change, right? So if change is happening to me, I'm not a huge fan. And it takes time to do this. Didn't get broke overnight. It's not going to get fixed overnight. We had a client, remodeling contractor, a pretty large remodeling contractor. I think they were top 5 in their geographic area, and they stuck with it. And they stuck with implementing this process and having these conversations and just trusting the process that we were guiding them on. And 2 years went by, and they called me and they said, Ryan, they go, it took us 2 years to believe you, but we just stuck with it. And guess what? We don't even post open jobs anymore. And we have the confidence we can fill every job because our pipeline of prospective candidates is so great. It's so deep. We have such a deep bench now. They go, we have people calling us every month. Hey, I'd love to come join your team. I want to be a part of what you're doing. They're not even recruiting anymore. Yeah. They get to pick the best of the best because they stuck with it and they followed a proven process.
Yeah, and they're almost, you talked about everything can be measured. I almost wonder if there are things like what percentage of candidates are coming from inbound, or how many inbound requests are we getting in a month based on how many openings we have? What's the ratio of that? You can of course survey people, but you can even ask them, why are you reaching out? Why are you applying? Just to try to get a pulse. And so in a way that's doing a great job for the organization. Now, the organization may or not be ready to grow and to have more people, and there's economic factors at play. But from an employee experience perspective, especially on the recruiting side, there are things that can be done and be measured, both from a single KPI as well as from an org-wide KPI. And so I think that's an important touch point you're hitting on, and these stories of indicating how people can ramp up to have the confidence to say, I've got 50 people that I can ramp up in 90 days, because when we say we're looking for people, we have the ability in working with you to get those positions filled in a timely manner, to do good work. And so I think that's really good that you're bringing light to all of this. And there just needs to be more of this, especially in the trades. We've talked about specifically just in manufacturing, how there's more openings today than in 2000, even with productivity gains, AI, automation, wage increases, and more. And so over and over, people will say, oh, we've got to try this, we've got to try that. And it really comes back down to, you've got to actually create a great environment where people want to be and they want to recommend others. And I think it's great that you have a specific focus on the trades, where there needs to just be more emphasis on this kind of mindset, where maybe it doesn't get as much focus as it does maybe in other areas. So thank you for doing all that. Thank you, Ryan, for coming on here. And for those of you who are looking for folks who can help with coaching and training, please consider Ryan and Core Matters.
Thank you.